All right, welcome to Big Book Compendium. So, in the past few weeks, um, well, in doctor's opinion, we learned about this phenomenon of craving for alcohol that happens once we start in this mental obsession that tells our mind to drink, even though there's tons of reasons in logic why we shouldn't, and that's what the obsession doesn't respond to reason. In Bill's story, we examined deeply into the downward spiral into the dark world of unmanageability. And then, of course, we examined his journey into the light of awakening and new life. So this chapter we're looking at today is very unique because the title is a promise. There is a solution. It's one of the only titles in the book that I think has a promise, unless you want to say more about alcoholism or something like that. No, but I like the good promises. So there is a solution. So my grant sponsor used to have a big book study, and other people use this title too, but he used it called Big Book Comes Alive. And today I think is when the book truly becomes alive, because we're going to start looking into elements of the program. So you notice it's called There Is a Solution, and it doesn't say there are solutions, because when people talk about the solution, to this day I still get puzzles with how many different ones there are that people mention. There are ones who say the solutions are the meetings, others say it's God, people say it's the big book. And I remember a guy once hearing a person say it's kindness, the steps, kind of, all those are kind of strange because the chapter is called There's a Solution. It's plural. And the reason why there are so many, I think, different solutions out there is because so many don't know what a solution is. And here's the simplest way I can explain it. In order to do that, we're going to look at simple mathematics. I'm going to put up a slide. All right. Everyone can see that. So it says 5 times 5 is 25. What is the solution? So when I do this live at a book study, I mean, live meaning in front of a crowd, I do it on a board, and it's amazing how many people don't grab it right away. So the solution, what is the solution of this? And people will say 25. Well, no, that's the answer. People jump on the answer right away. And this, well, it must be 5 times 5. And no, that would be the problem. So what's the solution of this? The solution is multiplication. And multiplication is a method used to bring us to an answer. And so you can solve a problem. And so a solution is the same. A solution is a method, it's a chemistry aspect. A solution is a method we use to bring us to an answer. And so what is the solution? Ours is we have a problem just like that, and we have a solution. What is the solution to overcome alcoholism or addiction? Or, is it meetings? What is the method used to solve the problem? Our problem we can see is allergy obsession. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, I joke with this and say it's top secret, but not many people really in recovery will know. So what I'm going to suggest to you is you might want to write down the solution is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And a lot of people get confused because what about step 2? What about God? But the solution is a method I use to bring me to the answer. And the thing is that's our solution. And oops, that's the wrong one. That's the solution. And the method to bring me to the answer. Now, so we take the problem, apply the solution, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we get the answer. What's the answer? The answer is whatever you land at. Because for some it might be God. For me it was, God's everything. So it's like it was freedom, and the freedom that, well, when I discovered God through 429, I had an experience through the steps. But it's different for everybody. That's why I say the answer is wherever you land. And again, the solution is a method to bring you to the answer. That's why the chapter is called The Solution and not this is the answer. So we're on page 17, and it says we of Alcoholics Anonymous. So here's the big thing. Who's the we? All the time people say it's us. It's the meetings. We're the we, and it says it in the book, and it says it in the steps. Is this book, you hear that all the time, and the we is the first one who wrote this book. And how it works, it says you want what we have. And and people in meetings jump on that, because that never made any sense to me, because I looked around the room and heard what people said, even when I didn't have a solution myself. And there wasn't much what I wanted, maybe your car or something, I don't know. But because that's what I heard. And when I was told it was the first 100, now it made sense. And that's why the steps are past tense and written that way. So let's go back. We have Alcoholics Anonymous, thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all of them have recovered. So there's that word again that we saw on the title page before. We talked about in great depth in this book study. But our book clearly states you can be recovered from alcohol. As a matter of fact, it's in the first 164 pages 17 times. Recovers in there 24 times. It's a lot of those words about being restored to health. My health is restored. I recovered from back surgery. My health was restored. They have solved their drink problem. There's a definition of what recovered is. They have solved the drink problem. That's what it means. They are not in the problem of continuously trying to solve it. They have solved it. The obsession is gone, removed, recovered. It says we are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economical, social, and religious backgrounds, where people who normally would not mix. But these exist among us, a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. Now look around, you can look around here, people from all over the world, different places, different time zones. And we're also have different ideas, political, economic, social, and religious. And we're people who normally would not mix. If you bump into each other on the streets, we probably wouldn't connect because we're so from different places, but we connect how? Let's see why. We are like the passengers of a great airliner. The moment after rescue from shipwreck from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyfulness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Steerage, you can say is, it's the cheapest to seat on the boat, on a ship. You got to remember too is when they're talking about shipwreck, we're not far off from the Titanic happening. This is 1937. Probably Bill's writing this stuff, and that was what, 1918, maybe I'm wrong, I forget. It was 19 something for Titanic, I forget, but it wasn't too far off, right? So that's why he's, that was still a big deal. The steerage is the cheapest seat on the boat. It's the lowest paying job in the boat. They're not seen because at all by anybody, and they're making the ship go on the right course. So even though they have the cheapest seat and the cheapest job, they're making sure the boat doesn't crash. Captain's table is the most expensive table on the boat, with the richest people. A lot of these boats had almost like boosters at that time, and those people would put a lot of money into these ships to be made, and their reward was they got to be at the captain's table when they rode. So here's the truth. Whether you pay the most expensive seat or the cheapest seat, you're going to drown like everyone else when the boat goes down. When the boat is sinking, people from steerage and captain's table are working together side by side. There's no, oh, you're from the cheapest seat, you're not allowed here. No, they're working side by side, not even judging anybody, because we're looking at death. And people who normally would not mix, not even see each other in the street. So unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster. It is not society as we go individual ways. So after the boat people reached the shore and they saved lots of people from a common problem of the boat sinking, they all say goodbye and hug and go their individual ways. Unlike us, we stick together. The feeling having shared a common peril is one element, just one, and the common cement which binds us. So look around here again. We all have the exact same common danger. We'll call it common problem, allergy obsession, right? And this common problem or peril, whatever you want to call it, is what brings us together. It's what has a seat next to each other. We call that fellowship. And what they're saying here is fellowship is only one element in the powerful cement which binds us. And so bind means to secure or fasten together. And to bind something also means to create an emotional connection. That's the different definition. And remember I said we are connected, we're saying because we have that common problem, but that's just the one part. Here's the warning. This is the warning I call the fellowship warning or the Tight 17 warning, we're going to call it. But that in itself, common problem, fellowship, would never have held us together as we are now joined. So the warning is he's conveying here is that fellowship is one element of the power cement which holds us together, just one. And what we are also, what he's also saying here is fellowship alone without the steps will not recover you from this illness. So many relapse over and over again and never see this point he is making here. And it really runs even deeper today, I'll say. People rarely ever say, I relapsed because I didn't do the steps. They say, I relapsed because I didn't go to enough meetings. And he's saying here, we cannot just go to meetings and not do the steps. Since the birth of the speaker discussion meetings in 1964, the message has been presented in Alcoholics Anonymous has drastically changed from a program of Alcoholics Anonymous representing this book to group therapy. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you know what you're stepping into. And not that we can't find people to work with, and not there's people like us there trying to dig through the weeds, so to speak. But when this book was written, people were not allowed to speak on whatever was on their mind at meetings. They weren't allowed to speak until they did their fifth step. And there wasn't even the speaker discussion meetings, the speaker meetings, either at 1 hour or 2.5 hours. And I don't even know if they had a time limit. And AA success rate today has declined 90% from when this book was written. So after second edition was written, when they said 75% recovery rate, and Clarence Snyder claimed 90%. So we're down 90%. That's not good. But the fellowship was, here's the thing, the fellowship was not designed as a place to complain and dump your shit and to tell drunkalog stories. It was a place to tell how it works. Discussing and sharing that we have a common problem, common allergy, will not hold us together in that sense. But that's what we do today at meetings. And that's why some people only know group therapy. And he's telling us very nicely, that's how it doesn't work. Having a common problem brings us together. That's it. So the big question is, what is the glue that holds us together? What's the glue? This is a tremendous fact. And one thing I want to mention about that is a fact is something proven to be true. And it does not need, well, first of all, anything that's proven, a proof has results, right? And a fact cannot be disputed because it's proven, meaning you can't argue with facts, but we still do. But this isn't any fact. This is tremendous fact. And tremendous is used to describe something as remarkable, very remarkable. He's putting this as great importance. The tremendous fact is every one of us, it's all of them, that's the first 100, is that they have discovered a common solution. It's the common solution of steps 49 that truly connect us like nothing else. And this group right here, we're bound together because we want to learn and know and talk about the common solution. And ask yourself right now, Is a fellowship today, is that what we see? Do we hear people talking about the common solution or the or more the common problem? And that's one reason why book thumpers are controversial today, because they're the third person to speak in a meeting, or the fifth, and they say, and they're like, people look over them like, this guy is really a big book fanatic or a book thumper, because no one else mentioned it so far, and we stand out. That's what we're supposed to do. We're doing our job, but people are stuck on the common problem that brought them into Alcoholics Anonymous in the first place, and that we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get away from the common problem. So I'm trying to escape it. I'm going to go to AA and just talk about it, and then wonder why I'm still stuck. So, if you go to a good weight loss meeting, do they talk about the crap they ate in the past, or do they talk about the food they must eat today? They talk about what keeps them healthy right now. They're not going to talk about McDonald's and the other crap they used to eat. They speak solution. And so it's back to the book. It says we have a way out, which we can absolutely completely agree upon. Again, do you see that in fellowship today? How many different ways are promoted? There's a meeting maker's way, there's the more meetings way, there's a half measures way, there's a sponsor's way. Don't take the first drink, fake it till you make it. The resentful way, the loaded way, the church way, the steps way. There's so many different ways. But then there's lots of time ways. And what's a success in recovery? Who is recovered, that doesn't have the obsession anymore, or the gentleman that just did his fifth step, that has a smile on his face, or just made a bunch of amends? No, it's the person with the most time. We celebrate time away from drink, not the solution. Let that sink in for a second. We're still focusing on the drink, and time away from drink. It really makes no sense. Is how many ways is the newcomer exposed to? Is the thing. All those things I mentioned. And does it seem like there's a common solution? Does it seem like there's a way out we can absolutely agree upon? If you think of the Wizard of Oz, how many yellow brick roads were there? There was one, and they knew it got to the wizard, so they stayed on it. So we have a way out which we can absolutely agree upon completely, and we can join in brotherly harmonious action. This is the great news. This is the great news this book carries for those who suffer from alcoholism. That's the great news in this book, is we have a way out which we can absolutely agree upon, because it's a fact. And even better, we can join in brotherly harmonious action. There's only one way in this book, and it works. And the great news isn't carried as much as it should. So we have two fellowships in AA: the fellowship of the meetings and the fellowship of the spirit. And the fellowship of the spirit, of course, is the more powerful of the two. It's the steps. In the fellowship, of the spirit, there's 5 things: the common problem, the common solution, there's a way out we can absolutely agree upon, we can join in brotherly harmonious action, and we are recovered. In the fellowship of the meetings, we have one thing: the common problem. And you could say that there's connection there, as love and people, that stuff, but we must do both fellowships. We can't just do the steps and not go to meetings, because we're not sponsoring, then we're not doing the steps unless we go to rehabs and stuff. But we should also represent Alcoholics Anonymous. And we also definitely cannot just go to meetings and not do the steps. I think some of us represent that. The fellowship on its own of the meetings will not change you. Sadly, it's very divided. And here's what I mean. Let's just say there is a convention hall with 2 large rooms, and room 1 says lectures all day, God's will, sold out, filled the capacity, standing only. Room 2 says God's will, all seats available. The point I'm making here is very important. People love to listen about God's will, but when it comes down to talking about the appropriate action to change and live in God's will, people would rather hear a lecture about God's will. People would rather know about God than know God. In churches all day, there's, we have one church before COVID used to crack 7,000 people a weekend. And a lot of it's just talking about God's will. And how many of them are living God's will? How many of them are awake? I'm not knocking, just saying but they're content with, hearing that lecture. Something similar is happening in AA. There's a meeting, packed to the rafters tonight with 150 people there. Probably not this time, but back in the day, 43 years ago, packed with 150 people there. Typical speaker discussion meeting with little or no talk of the solution. There's a bunch of people nodding their heads, agreeing with what the person is saying, laughing at jokes about driving a car off a, hitting a tree or whatever. But they're content with hearing about recovery than living recovery. And then right up the street, at the same time, there's a book study, much like this one. And there's about 12 people there, right? At this book study, they help you write a 4-step, and they even help you through the steps. And the problem is the room, like I said, is only a quarter full. And many of those people that attend the study have taken appropriate action or passing on to other people. Some of them are in the middle. Some of them are brand new. Do you just want to listen to stories about the steps, or know how the steps work? And even this is a lecture, right? This is, it's doing the work. This is but what's going on in AA is sadly many die because they don't want to know about it. And groups are so focused, firmly on, I wish they'd be more firmly on recovery. Sadly, in the rooms, it seems to be confusion. So many in the fellowship are confused because they think the solution is the meetings, and the solution is, not the steps. So many don't take the action, so they only know one, the common problem. And there is a common problem, and you simply must be open. Common solution. You must be open-minded to having it. Now, we're going to shift this. We're going to shift a little bit to the next paragraph, and now we start to look at the ugliness of this illness. And notice he calls it an illness and not a disease. Some simply call this stuff untreated alcoholism, or spiritual sickness, insanity. Some call it unmanageability. Remember, unmanageability comes from many different directions. There's the consequences in your life. There's the insanity of the first drink. And of course, there's all the spiritual sick stuff like resentments and stuff. So let's look at it. An illness of this sort, and we believe it is an illness, involves about us in no way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all people feel sorry for him and no one is hurt. So do people walk up to a person with cancer and say, just quit this cancer stuff? I'll never talk to you again? No. Do they make a big deal out of it? Do they say, you can stop this cancer if you wanted to? No, they are sympathetic and sad for them. They have compassion for them. As alcoholics, we feel the same way for another alcoholic because we have empathy and compassion, especially the compassion part. The compassion part, empathy is just saying, I know Kevin's a drunk. I see him on the sidewalk drinking a beer. But then I see, Kim, who is drinking, but he also has a pain in his eyes that I can relate with because I've experienced that part, the resentments and anger and stuff, empathy and compassion. Non-alcoholics will never understand why we drink again. They cannot, because, and why do we not stop before our kids or ill health? They can stop because they can. They don't have the allergy obsession. But not so with the alcoholic illness. For it goes alienation of all things worthwhile in life. Alienation means to kill or destroy in large numbers, like a hurricane. And how many things did you annihilate in your life? What is value in your life? Kids, spouse, family, friends, job you love. It's common sense that if anything hurts or threats those things, we do less or we stop. But not with the obsession of alcohol. It does not care for any of that stuff. There is no reasoning that will stop it. It does not say, oh yeah, you love your wife or kids, just don't drink today. No, it doesn't even go to in your head. Kids, spouse, the job. I heard my friend said it best years ago. It all fits into a bottle. It all fits into a pipe. All your house, your kids, your family, it all fits in there. That's how crazy it is. It says in engulfs. That means submerges all those lives that touch the sufferer. All includes the ones we love. Pretty much indication that we have caused lots of harms and lots of resentments. Our harms and resentments just go from one life to the next. And I love it when, in a sarcastic way, when newcomers say, the only person I ever harmed is myself. Even guys who've been around for years say that. Or they say, I don't have resentments. It's like, really? How? I mean, I'm comparing it to myself, but I've heard lots of inventories and done lots. But we put people through hell, but the only person I harmed is me. Let's check more of this stuff out. So we're going to break down each one here. It brings misunderstanding. So no one understands why we do what we do, but the biggest misunderstanding is we cannot comprehend that there is life beyond where we're at when we're in the cycle of drinking. And within, remember the cycle we discussed in a doctor's opinion, the allergy obsession, it keeps going and going, right? That's another reason why so many don't do the steps is first of all, you can't, when you're drinking, you can't get past where you're at because allergy obsession, and you get here and you're still stuck in the obsession and you're still stuck in resentments and you're like, this is the best it'll get. I've heard people say that before. Why should I do the steps when this is, it's not going to fix me? Fierce resentment. Fierce means violent resentment. What happens if we're violent with resentment? It's a harm. So selfishness is tending mostly to my own needs with little or no thought of others, right? Self-seeking is pursuing those interests. So if I have a resentment against Kevin and because he kicked my dog and he didn't see me, he doesn't know that I even witnessed it. I'm selfish because I have a resentment. But then I go kick his door in and kick his head in, kick him, now it turned to self-seeking. I pursued it. Resentment to harm, resentment to harm. Fierce resentment is resentment to harm. So fierce resentment is a very good indication that we have harmed people. So financial insecurity. Here we get our first mention of an instinct that we see in the third column of the inventory. And one of the biggest driving forces is resentment, and fear is pocketbook, otherwise known as material security. Another word for insecurity is anxiety, which is intense fear. So it's another good indication that we have some fears to deal with, right? But that pocketbook one is a big one. Because how many times do we let that get the best of us? Especially when we're, out there, we just burn things to the ground, especially other stuff. Disgusted friends and employers. So we know disgusted means disapproval, strong disapproval, I'll say. Did your friends disapprove of your drinking? Did they disapprove of your thinking and your actions, leading them to have resentments against you and leading them for you to have resentments against them? Interesting how that works. Go back to your first inventory and look at how many people confronted you first, but they're the bad person. We harmed lots of friends who were trying to help us. And how many second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chances did they give us? Same thing goes for employers and friends. And it's that's if we had a job. If we weren't employable. I had a guy explain that years ago. We were, oh yeah, I had a job, but you had a job that worked with your drinking or your drug usage, but didn't test you or whatever, I've had bosses back in the day, or we all had bosses that walked up to you and maybe they hand you the paperwork and said, you had so much potential. What are you doing with your life? Or anyone said that. Look this is the one that gets me the most. Warped lives of blameless children. Are you the product of an alcoholic home? Were you one of the blameless children? And did you say, I never will do this to my own children? I will never treat my children like that. I'll never leave, I'll never do that in front of my kids. I'll never leave my kids for hours of the day. And then we do the same to our kids. So what disgusts me is when alcoholics act like we're the victims in this. These are the innocent victims right here, the children. And some of us have harmed our kids so bad, it takes years for them to accept our amends. We have to work our way slowly into it, but always have the willingness to do it. That's why we keep praying the 8-step, the willingness prayer in step 8 over and over again. Some never even make amends to their kids, and that makes me sick. Makes me absolutely sick. Makes me absolutely sick. It makes me sad for those people like that. Blameless children is another indication we have harmed people, especially, that. Sad wives. This is just like the friends, and how many second chances, 10 chances do they give us? How many times do they tell us they're done, and eventually they are. But I've watched wives, love and still love their husbands, just have no choice but to leave. I just bumped into a guy the other day, or a wife the other day. I asked her how her husband was, and she says, I had no choice. I had to leave. I love him so much, and I just can't watch him drink himself to death. And that's what happens. On the flip side, I've seen relationships reassembled. I bumped into a couple the other day holding hands in Costco, I'd known they'd been back together for years, but they were like at war with each other, even when they got in recovery together. And now they're, back happily married for 7 years after 22 years of insanity. After making amends, and the recovered alcoholic and his wife, they can have happy lives together. It's beautiful stuff to witness. I love hearing a wife say, this is, not the same person anymore. Where anyone says that, it's a testimony to the steps and hard work. Parents, remember remember that look of disappointment on your mom's face, or the look of disgust on your dad's face. The look of disgust on my dad's face was when I called my brother to bail me out of jail one time. My dad picked me up, and I was only like 22 at the time. All he had to do is just give me that look. I remember robbing my parents of their emotional security. Just my mom not being able to sleep at night. When I made amends to my mom, she said, I'm just glad we're not getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning anymore to scrape you off the street somewhere. And I don't have to look at that homeless guy to see if it's you. I don't have to look at that body on the side of the road to see if it's you. I robbed them of their emotional security. How many people do we rob of their emotional security? Again, who are the victims here? One of the greatest gifts is the opportunity to make right with those people, make amends. Just beautiful. And it says anyone can increase the list. Yes, we can, but we won't, because we'll be here all day. We'll do that when we get closer to step 4. So this paragraph is one of the first ones that it kind of ripped my spine out and showed it to me. It showed me that I had some rebuilding to seriously do, and I still do. It showed me that a side that is reality, that rarely is talked about at meetings. People rather talk about DUIs and alcoholic seizures and overdoses and talk about the people they cause pain to in their life, their kids and their spouses. I love when a guy gets up there or a woman gets up there and talks about the amends they make to their kids and they have it all back. And then people still look at them funny. Again, I'm not knocking meetings at all. I love meetings. I'm just speaking the truth. But it truly shows me the destruction I caused, this paragraph. And I need to look deeply at my harms. I said in this paragraph, it engulfs all lives who touch to suffer. I'm going to share with you guys something. I'm going to tell a little story. So this is called the Circle of Engulfment. And you see in the middle, it says Miss X. So This is a domestic incident I had through drinking. The first person in the circle, of course, as I said, is Miss X. That was my girlfriend at the time, who I hurt very badly in this incident. Um, there were her friends who tried to break it up. Now I have two friends involved, and that got into a fight too. And then there was other people that were around, the next door neighbors who witnessed it. And then after it was all over, the girl called her my parents. She called her parents. Oh, and I almost forgot. I fought I fought the four cops that came too to arrest me. So um, you see how one incident created more and more harm. 13 people in that circle. Yet the only person I ever harmed is myself. It engulfs all lives who touch the sufferer. That's a mess right there. You see it. You see it. I mean, another example I can give you: when I was 23 years old, I got engaged to a woman, and it was a very pretty girl who I loved, very, perfect. And so a week before 2 weeks before the wedding, I canceled. I did not want to marry her. I had a fear of losing her if I didn't marry her, at least drag it along. And I canceled it several times, or we stretched it out for as long as we could until she finally said, "I'm going to leave you unless we get married." And I was like, okay. It was supposed to be small, but everything was purchased, everything was bought. And it engulfed a lot of people because there was relatives who bought their tickets. There was family and friends that were there. I didn't find this out 2 years later, but um, my fiance's mother at the time, she was bipolar and she had a breakdown because of it, and she fired employees and all this stuff. It just lost it. There it goes on again. How many people need to get hurt? You know, you know, people say there's no harm inventory, and it's a touchy subject to bring up amongst people doing this step work, because it doesn't necessarily say, this isn't Bill's story. He mentions it in Bill's story, but and we'll get more into that when we get to that. But why wouldn't I want to do it? Why wouldn't I want to go further? Um, and we need to look at this stuff and heal. We never hurt anyone. Come on. I mean, if I'm just doing harm inventory by writing self-seeking down for my resentments, what about the people I just got caught in the crossfire? I don't look at those harms. I need to look at all of it. To achieve freedom, we must get past guilt. And how do I overcome guilt? By looking at my harms 4 through 9, and living then living 10, 11, 12 to stay on the right path. This type of unmanageability we've gone over so far that does not get fixed by praying it away, or it's fixed by action and more action. It says, we hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. There are many. Those doesn't say a few. Page 19. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. That means honestly. Okay? That means honestly. And I saw psychiatrists growing up. I mean, I remember I used to see this person down the street, and I was 8 years old because I stabbed a kid with a pencil in school. I think I threw a backpack at him, and there's a pencil stuck with him. So my parents, the school made me go to a therapy, but it was attack therapy. I was 8 years old. I'm 52 now, so it's talking the 70s. And I remember I was too afraid to be honest. But the same also went with confession too. I grew up a Catholic, went to Catholic school, and around 10 or so, we decided to start going to confession. And I went there, and I looked at it as an outlet at first, but then once I started growing, and growing into manhood, so to speak, 13, 14 years old, I didn't want to tell these people what the stuff I did, so I'd make stuff up. I wasn't honest. The more you lie, the bigger the lie you live. I love a Thomas Jefferson quote. We are the creator of our own reality. And my grandmother used to say across of that about honesty is, she used to say, honesty is the first chapter of the book of wisdom. You think about that. That's why it's so hard for people. We don't know wisdom. Back to the book. Strangely enough, wise parents and intimate friends usually find it even more approachable than the psychiatrist and the doctor. I don't mean to laugh, that's true. Meaning we lied to them also. Do you see why Bill says rigorous honesty? Not just honesty. Honesty is the awareness of where I'm at. That's the definition of honesty. Where do I have a resentment? Do I have fear? Do I feel sad? Self-honesty, honest with ourselves. Those who can be honest with themselves do recover. Rigorous honesty is complete honesty. He says entire psychic change. He uses a word like complete honesty. He uses the word fully a lot in here. Complete, wholeness. We got to be complete and full with a lot of this stuff to have wholeness, which is complete. So rigorous honesty. But with the ex-problem drinker who's found the solution, that's steps 4 through 9, who's probably armed with facts, not theories, right? Facts about himself. That's the allergy obsession. That's the facts. Can usually win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. So facts about himself also are not just allergy obsession. He's also talking about, hey, I've had a spiritual awakening, you've had too, because here's what I did. These resentments did this to me, this harms and fears did this to me. And look where I'm at now. And that confidence they're talking about is not won by telling war stories. It comes by explaining, when you meet a person the first time, we sit down with that person and explain our drinking. But we use words. When I explain my drinking to an alcoholic, I say, I don't get into, situations. I say when I drank, I lost all control when I started. But what made me pick up and go back to doing what to destroy me, I explained the obsession. But here's why we need to do that, get their confidence. Until such understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. It's very simple. If that doesn't happen, that connection, they're not going to work with you. They're not going to work with anybody. They might not even be ready yet. That the man who is making the approach, so here's some qualifications. The man who's making the approach had the same difficulty. That's not the same drugs or the same alcohol. That's allergy obsession. He obviously knows what he's talking about. Hopefully they do. That his whole deportment shouts out the new prospect, he is a man with a real answer. 4 through 9 will give me that it is the real answer, and it will give me an aura about me that other people want. It will give you an element of the promises coming true in your life. And that's a fact. How the promises, are they coming true in your life? Or that he has no attitude of holier than thou. Something we see a lot in recovery. I don't go back to places that have a lot of this holier than thou attitude of, that's the attitude of superiority. When the sponsors talk down the sponsees, like they treat them like garbage, like this, like the soapbox, speaking down from the spiritual hilltop they're on, and they speak down the sponsees the same way like an asshole boss would. Excuse my French, but what is the example? Where is the example of promises in that? Where's the spirituality in that? They say, I cannot believe you drank again, and they rub their face in it. That they get mad at them when they don't listen and fire them. I've been doing this for 20 years, if that matters, but I sponsored the joy of sponsoring lots of people. I've never had to fire anybody. They go away. And not because I make them angry. Sometimes the work is too much for them to bear. Sometimes they're just not ready. Is that, but that's, the holy now attitude is you're putting the sponsor on the pedestal, and that's not dependence on, it's not about dependence on them. in a program that's built upon, depends upon God. Depends on them. That's some other program. That's not the A program. And I've had to confront sponsors to do that. I don't do that anymore, but I've had to do it in the past. I don't mean confront them in an ugly way. You know, um, I've taken over guys from those sponsors, and I never forget, one guy had a sponsor that took a swing at him. I go, why? And he says, because he made me pick up cigarettes outside a meeting because I didn't know he couldn't smoke over there. And I told him, I said, listen, I didn't come here to pick up cigarettes. And the sponsor pushed him. And then he's like, what? And the guy wanted to beat him up. And I'm like, that's just insane. That he has no holier now attitude, that nothing except, here's what we want, except a sincere desire to be helpful. That goes deeper the more you do the steps. That there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured, except for this one. These are the conditions we meet, we found most effective. After such an approach, many take up from their beds and walk in. That's the miracles. I love that. Especially when you see a guy come in and they come in and out, in and out, in and out, and oh, that's John from the homeless, circle up the street. But he comes in here once in a while. You don't see him for a while, and all of a sudden he shows up and wearing nice clothes. It takes you a few minutes to recognize him. I love that. That's the miracles. Nothing of us makes none of us make a sole vocation for this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that our elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. But wait a minute, I thought the stopping of our drinking was the end. You put the plug in the jug. Don't drink no matter what. People who feel that way never have admitted defeat, because when we admit defeat, you want something new. You want to get into spiritual progress. A more important demonstration of our principles, that's 4 through 9, lies before us in our respected homes, occupation, and affairs. What is demonstrated in your home? It's your occupation and your affairs. The promises that we are no longer fighting anything, that we act sanely and normally, that we can look the world in the eye. We have new freedom and new happiness. Comprehend the word serenity and know peace. The problem, the obsession, is no longer there. The problem has been removed. We've been rocking into a fourth dimensional existence, all that stuff. We're walking on the bright highway, hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. We're not acting or pretending to impress. We're living unconsciously, unconsciously with consciousness. Or should I say, with peace. People say that, and that they want what we have, but they won't do the work. It's lots of people claim to walk this path, some over 30 years, and they don't demonstrate those promises in their life. There's nothing. When I said I'd look around the meetings, that's what I don't want. And I'm always get jazzed when someone, even with how long I've been around for, always meeting someone that has something I want, and it's not their car. It's the spirit. It's something I learned. I'm always a beginner's mindset. For many years, I placed my recovery meetings, on people. I did it for a long time. And I saw very bad examples of behavior, and all it did was help me validate my own. I've seen people die because of that, and that's what makes me sad. It says all of us spend much of our spare time in that sort of effort, which we are going to describe. A few are fortunate enough to be so situated that they can give nearly all their time to this work. What do you do with your spare hours? If you work long hours, what do you do with your spare hours? You binge Netflix or watch your favorite show? Or do you go to a place, to the watering hole that you can help people at, the fishing hole? I'm not talking about a bar, I'm talking about a fishing hole, the place, the rehab, the meeting, that's what we're looking at. Whenever I read that if you are fortunate to be such a situation they can give all the time this work, I think of myself because in 1999 I broke my back, and that was my big downfall because it got me not only hooked on alcohol. I was already hooked on alcohol, got hooked on pills. Everything just collapsed, and today I'm able to. I have a wife that's amazing that lets me, live my recovery, never questions it. She knows it's number one in my life, so I can have the things I love. And I have to build my life around this. People say, Steve, why do you do so much with recovery? Because that's my spare hours. It sounds insane, but maybe God did break my back so I could do this. I don't know. That's one of my inside jokes I always say. I used to have a friend who was in a wheelchair that he died of a few years ago, muscular dystrophy. And he said God put him in a wheelchair so he could do what he's doing right now. Amazing person. Um, you know, my spare time gets smaller and smaller. My kids get more. My life, I got kids, but it's all about growth and it's about balance. See what else it says here. If we keep on that way we're going, there's little doubt that much will result, but the surface of the problem would be hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that to by close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. Sadly, I see people relapsing almost like that. Like it's a thing to do, almost like, and here's why. Here's why. Many could recover if they had the opportunity we have enjoyed. What is the opportunity we have enjoyed? That we had someone put in front of us that could explain the solution. Not many, not many can, because they're not willing to do the work. But here's the thing is, before we condemn or be judgmental, we need to remember that person has not experienced or been exposed to the program. Before we roll our eyes and say, oh, here comes this guy again at the meeting, we have to realize that that person has not been exposed to the program. They have not had the opportunity. And my sponsor, I remember, we don't know their whole story. And my sponsor one time years ago got really upset with me after a meeting saying, that guy just rambles on. And he goes, you know how hard it is to be that guy? To have the resentments he has, have the fears he has, that to look himself in the mirror and the pain he has. And you don't have that because you do this process. Well, you do, but you do something about it. And I went, wow. So interesting, those little things like that can change our perspective. It says, how then shall we present that which has been so freely given to us? I love that I didn't know what it meant to be a real help to other people. It is to freely give of myself without thought, even idea of comprehension of anything in return. I always had to have something in return, without being ordered or forced into doing it. It's just effortless. It's my nature now to want to help people. My nature now was to take everything away from you and hurt you, because I was driven by instincts. As soon as I experienced the magic of this program, all I wanted to do was this right here and keep doing it. The reason why I love doing book studies is because it not only reminds me of the program, but it gets people to be more interested in it and look at things a certain way. It's all I wanted to do. So next time we will continue from this point, and we're going to get into the 3 types of drinkers. I'm going to stop the recording.